Commission, and then we'll shift back to our normal meeting business. Once you've had a chance to ask any questions that you might have of Sean and Michael. So Sean, if you're willing to take that away, you're up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks everyone for allowing us to join the call. Just to introduce myself, my name is Sean Greenberg. Mike and I work for Insight Public Sector. And if you haven't heard of Insight, we are a Fortune 500 IT solutions provider. So we do everything from community broadband to cloud storage, IT services, and I am the client executive for New York State. And I live on Long Island, and I cover New York State and New York City. Mike?
Hello there. I think my mute's off. Yeah, this is Michael Mitchell. I'm a solutions account executive, really with the Insight Public Sector, supporting Sean and other client executives around services, solutioning, and primarily, my role has been focused around broadband solutions for communities, and that's a wide range of services and kind of a solution opportunities that we work with.
Awesome. And Mike, if you could just give like a quick synopsis of what we were able to do with the county.
With the county, is that correct, Johnny?
Yeah.
You're breaking up a little bit, but is that with the county? Yeah. So Albany County had reached out, and we put a response into an opportunity that they were looking for along with other vendors, and we were selected to help the county do a feasibility study. And really what that was trying to do was to say that within the county, let's identify those areas that are unserved or underserved, which is really what the federal legislation and grant funds are targeting, trying to identify those underserved and unserved locations. And then that's what's being used to help generate, to provide abilities to go and look at funding to deliver and build out solutions and networks to support those underserved and underserved locations within communities and counties for that. So it was a 4 or 5 month study, because there was a lot of work that goes into it, is looking at the providers, looking at what the speeds are, what areas are have no providers or don't have any providers that meet the definition, and then helping the county looking at partners and other organizations that they can work with to build out and deliver a broadband service to these residents or businesses. So that was the initiative that we worked on with the Albany County. Are there any questions on that?
Yes, Michael, just one question. When you talked about your goal was to identify unserved and underserved areas. I know that one of the concerns that we've had with our recent research is that the way the federal criteria was being set did not include amongst the list of reasons say anything to do with economic inability to afford the service. It was only if is there a firm that serves that area? Is there cable that goes through that area? So in theory, if they could afford it, yes, they're considered a served area.
It's the answer on the unserved and the underserved.
Yeah,
does not have economic affordability does not play into that directly.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Because it's really based on what speeds are available. Underserved is if you can't achieve or you're not offered or what's not available is 100 megabits down by 20 megabits up. So if you don't have that, if you're below that, you're considered to be underserved.
Okay.
If you are less than 25 down and 3 megabits per second up, then and if you're below that, that's considered to be unserved.
Okay, so that is consistent with what we've been hearing.
Okay, yes, and that is consistent with the definitions as well.
Okay, because some of the maps that we've seen show that the city, just by way by way of example, is better than 98% served.
Correct.
Using those standards. The reality for a lot of our areas is the reason that people don't have access is because they can't afford it, which is
Yep.
something that that I know they've been trying to expand what the feds use as a criteria, but to my knowledge, for the grant programs, they haven't made that modification yet. That's
No,
still,
and that's correct. That's my understanding as well. I will say though that in certain areas of the country, in certain states,
Yeah.
they are trying to take that a factor into account. And depending on what funding source it is that they're trying to go back. For example, a community development block grant
right.
doesn't necessarily look at the speeds in a sense, but it's also not about delivering it directly to the home or providing
Right.
fiber or other type of a service to the home.
Right.
It's about other ways and lots of options that you have available with that grant. But anyway, it's looking more on the economic side of
Okay.
life than it is about whether or not they have a certain speed available to them.
So we couldn't necessarily apply for the federal broadband grant programs directly, but we could use, for example, the CDBG money possibly to fund projects that would bring it to the area. Something along the lines of a mesh net network to serve an area rather than the FTTH.
Correct. And as a matter of fact, we're just wrapping up a block grant that we've done with a city down in South Texas using the CDBG grant and doing just that. It's bringing wireless mesh network out in some parks around their public library and several of the parks that are in some of these economically disadvantaged areas.
Okay.
And that was how that grant was submitted and applied and delivered against.
What I'd be intrigued is, given in addition to the normal CDBG programs here in New York State, we also have the programs that could be done through the REDIC, the regional economic development councils, which traditionally would be a partner type of grant between private sector and government to provide services. Have you had any experiences with looking at those type of programs to fund these type of projects, projects?
I have not directly, but I'm gonna look into that as well, because I mean that's one of the interesting things that they've been able to show and they've been able to really define based on data, is that by bringing broadband and connectivity to some of these economically disadvantaged areas, there is a direct tie and a relationship to how that helps build and grow that economic foundation and opportunities for those constituents, those residents. And it's been able to have a very quick relationship to that, versus whereas if you're just bringing electricity. I was just on a conversation today and they said that when the electricity was brought out, it was more of a generational growth and change, whereas now with connectivity it's actually bringing it to be more of that single inline, that same same generation. It doesn't have to, and it expands beyond generations within that those families.
Right. That makes sense. My last question. Now, you worked with the county of Albany on their report. Did you finalize your work with the county commission, or is that still an ongoing?
That I believe that has been finalized, and we have worked with them, and they are now in the process. Last I understand, I have not spoken with them for a few. It's been a couple months now, but what they're now doing is taking that and starting to look at it and saying, okay, now how do we go? What's the next? How do we proceed forward? What do we need to look at? You know, and you brought the point up about the definition, whereas you know there's a lot of folks that don't have access, but it doesn't meet the definition of the grant programs and what's been the studies been done around. So there's still challenges that communities are facing about saying, well, you're telling me I need to go fix this. We need to kind of work together to go, you know, solve for this, but you're tying my hands to really go do it correctly.
Right, and I think that would be a thing that we would have to talk to our congressional congressional delegation about at some point, to see about some kind of pressure to expand the definitions involved, because by my reading of the research on those programs, it's a great advantage to let's say the plain states, which are very spread out and very tough to serve, but for the Northeast, which tends to be more dense, it's really not as big a boon to us up here. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, what it comes down to in my experience, and really from a technical perspective, I look at it, I try to, you know, when we look at these types of projects and we work with different communities across the US, the technology of what you're trying to solve for is going to change based upon a lot of the factors. And again, the Northeast it's a lot more foliage, a lot more hills, a lot more, you know, the dense population is good, you would think, for being able to deliver a solution to a larger quantity of households, with, you know, kind of a better costing for that versus when you're going out to some of the rural areas on that. But I mean, you know, the terrain, we did the study in Albany County, even that we started to see, you know what, there's rural areas that you guys have that, you know, people may not consider it to be, you know, it's New York, there's people everywhere, but there's a lot of rural pockets that are still facing the same challenges that some of the central and Midwest states are facing.
Sure. I mean, out in the towns, you start to run into two different terrain problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're sitting in little bowls, basically granite on four sides, which is kind of tough to get a signal through. You got a lot of ground. You got a lot of groundwater, a lot of wetland areas. So laying cable can be incredibly challenging with the freeze and thaw. So I can see where those areas would definitely be an area that might qualify. Unfortunately, here in the city, and as I say, it's technically by the way it's defined now, less so. But you could probably point out one or two smaller areas where it's the case.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Does anyone else have questions for Mike or Sean?
You know, one of the things I wanted to highlight real quickly is that
sorry, Michael, you're breaking up pretty
bad. What's that again?
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
I'd probably say to go off video just because.
Okay, that's what I'll do. Hang on here.
And also, you know, before Mike comes back, I just want to say that, you know, also regarding the county is the funding part, right? So where's the funding going to come from, right? So there are a few funding sources that, you know, I think, you know, were announced over the last couple of years. The monies are just starting to roll out. So, you know, the funds just haven't been available for use
Yeah.
quite yet. But, we're working with a few people to just get a better idea of when those monies become available. But
Great.
what we always recommend is, if, it's kind of like a first come, first serve, a lot of these funds. So
Sure.
if you don't get the paperwork in or the application in or it approved internally by, a certain time, that could cause you not to get, approved for the funding. So that's something that we, that if you wanted to have another conversation around that, we
Sure.
can talk about that
That makes sense.
when the
Mark-
time is appropriate.
Yeah, Martin is the head of our finance team. Martin, did you have any questions about that you wanted to ask?
I think my question, I guess, went along the lines of, I guess, we understand that. I think we would have to look at, potential, funding sources and what the categories as well as any potential time limits. But I guess what I was more or less wondering was, I think, would organization companies like yours, do you assist municipalities in terms of developing RFIs or RFQs for these type of ventures?
Okay, great question. So the technical answer is we're not allowed to technically be involved in the creation of you developing the works, the RFQ or RFI, but we do have partners that I can refer you to that can help you write those RFIs, RFQs.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
I can share that with you, with Craig. I can share that information with you after the
Great.
call. And when you're ready, you can reach out to them and have a conversation with them.
Sure. All right.
Can
Michael,
you guys hear me?
Yep, Michael, you're back, so that's good. Yep.
Okay, good. So yeah, real quick, and to kind of highlight that, to talk about one of the a use case that I think is good to know is that during the pandemic, when there were a lot of counties and municipalities trying to identify how to solve for this, we worked with and were able to quickly work with a large county in South Texas. It's right along the U.S.-Mexico border. And when you start talking about the affordability, the county with the funds available, the COVID relief funds, the CARES Act funds that were available, there wasn't as many stipulations and requirements that they had to adhere to. So they were really open to having to say, how can we quickly solve for this? What we ended up working with them to do is they worked with 12 different school districts within their county and identified the most at need location, the families that had the most need for the students, and those students then and then the county said, okay, this is where we want to start to bring internet. How can we do it quickly and the most cost efficient to get the most people access? That was really kind of the driver. And so we developed a public wireless mesh solution that we were basically going out into these neighborhoods and in these areas, because of the economic disadvantage, they call them colonias, and they have a lot of them have very little infrastructure, utilities, lights, street lights. Some of them are dirt roads, so it's very, very distressed area. And we would go in and we would deploy Wi-Fi, and these were students that actually were challenged with getting connected and had problems getting connected. We're now all of a sudden having connectivity. We're very excited about it, and it's an offer that the county was providing as a free service to those residents and to those students. And so at the end of the day, we deployed over 3,000 access points. We utilized microwave point-to-point radios. We also had several points of presence that would backhaul the traffic onto a fiber network. But if we had to get the network deployed or pushed out to a larger location, a further location, that's where we'd use microwave point-to-point network, gigabit speed connectivity there. And then we deployed, like I said, over 3,000. It's supporting over 32,000 students and residents within the county. That's giving them connectivity now. And the fascinating thing is that since that network has been operational, is the amount of usage that is still occurring on that network for those residents. And it's starting to, you're starting to see the economic benefits for that. You're starting to see where they're out there working to try to get more connectivity for looking for jobs, working in different areas, different types of service businesses, as well as the healthcare environment. So those are a lot of really neat outcomes that, sometimes when you're in the thick of some of these large projects, you don't always see that or understand that, but it's a very rewarding outcome for these types of engagements.
No, I'll tell you, that's definitely the kind of thing. I mean, we've been looking at this for a little more than a year, and trying to come up with a way to basically solve the we'd like to solve broadband citywide. That's the dream, of course, but the reality is to at least phase it in those areas where the greatest need exists. And a lot of this came out of the pandemic, students being forced to work from home, just to study from home, and simply we could get the schools could get the laptops to them, or the or the tablets to them, but a lot of them didn't have access to the internet. So literally, it was things like using people on staff trying to reach out to use car lots in certain neighborhoods to beg them to use their Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Parents bringing their kids to parking lots of people like McDonald's and Burger King to use the Wi-Fi. And that's just not acceptable. That's in no way that is in no way acceptable anywhere, much less the capital city of the state of New York. That's ridiculous.
Yes. Yep.
So, part of what drives us, has driven all of us towards the goal we hope to achieve, is to come up with a plan, to propose a plan to the city, where they can then take that report and say, okay, this gives us a strategy to move this ahead.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a few different possibilities. We did recommend they follow the development of a mesh network in our preliminary report, working towards the final report now. And actually, we're going to have to, I think, they have to crawl before they walk thing, which is a little bit frustrating for all of us. We're going to suggest the possibility that they actually create a position internally within city government.
Mm-hmm.
To coordinate broadband projects within the city itself. The goal being to eventually lead to a city-run, municipally run, or authority-run broadband network in the city.
Yes.
Can't really do that up front because of the cost. But I think certainly the kind of things that you're talking about would feed both of the strategies that we were looking at. Unfortunately, one of the things that we're limited by is we are a commission of volunteers with no specific budget for our work.
Right.
So what we can do is, if you can identify for us, which would really help us out, the cost of doing the kind of study that you're talking about, we can include that, and we'll say, listen, here are examples of people that could assist us with this, you being one of them, certainly. And given your work with the county, I think that makes sense to look at that, because we do want to encourage partnerships between county and city.
Right.
So we're not shooting the same ground twice. I think that would be a lot of help to us. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this? Diana, Jeff, Josh, Martin? You're all on mute, just so you know.
Yeah, no, that really would be, I think, very helpful, at least, to kind of help us put a number as to, how much it may cost to, really start to get this going.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a piece. Jeff, what are your thoughts from the partnerships point of view? Jeff? You're on mute, just, you know. I don't know if he's there or if he's not. Dan, Diana, did you start to say a thing before?
I was saying that the information provided was very insightful, and I was taking notes. Insightful, no pun intended.
Right, sorry. All right.
I do it all the time. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh,
We actually like those puns.
there you go. Josh, did you have anything that you wanted to ask?
I had a question about when you were talking about the microwave point-to-point network.
Yes.
How can you go more into that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I can show you a kind of a quick little slide that let me get that up real quickly, and then let me just see if I can share real quickly, and that will kind of be something that can, at least you'll visualize what you're seeing. And let me hit share. Alrighty, is that something you can see now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So really what it comes down to is, again, we would look at towers, and we would try to identify and locate different towers within the county, existing towers, if they were a water tower per se. And like, I'm gonna try to go down here to see if I can. Yeah, right here's some pictures. So right here is like a water tower that we used. And you can see these radios out here, and these are some of these point-to-point radios. There's one that's going in this direction, and there's another one that's going in another direction. And they're basically communicating with basically a sibling that looks just like them. And they're basically communicating, they're just passing the data through the microwave channels. And it's a point-to-point where, I mean, you could be talking, 6-8 miles in a sense on some of these, or even further, depending on the radio, the receiver, and all the devices that you use. But you can get 1 gig to 1.5 gig, and in some instances, what we had to do is we actually had to build the tower, and this is like building one of these towers in right around a school grounds. This is where the school partnered with the county very quickly and said, hey, we love what we're seeing here, and we want to help. So yeah, if you guys need to put a tower in our back of our school, then let's do it. So that's kind of what it is. And so when I come back up to this slide, you can see that we had these towers that were communicating out here. What that does, it allows me to take this tower now. I'm receiving the signal. I don't need to have fiber to the tower, but I've got the signal there. Now I can broadcast down to the street level. And then at the street level, I can come down again and show you this. Right here is an example of what we have on the street level, where it's receiving a point to multipoint connection from that tower.
Yeah.
And then it's connected to the radios, and the radios are doing a mesh network. And so each one of these nodes will be able to support, 4 to 6 radios. And then you have another one that's doing a similar thing. And so you've kind of got these areas that are, whoops, get back to my screen here, and then they're connected to the other mesh radios, and they're just broadcasting out to the street in that area. Does that kind of help explain what it is from a high level without getting too technical?
Josh, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. That's so multiple people, like when you get to the street level, like multiple households can connect to one like node, and then that's connecting back up to the tower that's broadcasting.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. And I have another slide, I don't have it here, but that's exactly it, is that you're having multiple households are connecting up, and right here you can see the AP that we have, and it's actually broadcasting out around that neighborhood, and you got multiple households and multiple devices. I mean, each AP can, depending on the AP, you can get 500 to 1,000 devices that can connect to it.
Wow.
So you got to look at the design to make sure that it doesn't overpower what your backhaul is going to do. So there's a lot of pieces that you want to take into account. And you don't want to go back and overcommit what it's going to do if you don't understand the use case and where it's being deployed.
Right. Mike, if I could just add, Mike and Sean, both. I know that we had a presentation from the sustainability coordinator for the city last fall. And one of the things that he talked about was they had a very small grant to look at a limited light pole installation, I believe along the South Pearl Street corridor, where they were doing like a smart pole where there would be a node mounted on light poles owned by the city, which is a kind of a mixed bag. Here, there are a lot of poles that are owned by the city and a lot of them that are not.
Right.
So the ones that they own, there is a map of them, as it turns out. At first, they weren't sure that there was. That really, to our eyes, if all the poles could be brought to bear, would seem to cover what I would call our phase one greatest need area in the economically distressed parts of the city. Is that the kind of product? Would that sort of approach be something that you'd be able to do as well, to expand beyond the grant? I mean, the grant was going to be more of a proof of concept for the sustainability program here in the city, because they were looking at a way to monitor it for, do they need to fix the light? Do they need to adjust the lighting? But they knew there were more capabilities than just that. You could put, they were a Wi-Fi node, so they were transmitting data back and forth. They could also expand to provide Wi-Fi service off of those poles.
Correct. Yes.
So what I'm wondering is, the different pieces that I'm seeing, those are fairly large pieces of technology. Is it something that could be adapted to a light pole?
Yes.
For example. Okay.
Yeah, if you can kind of see down here.
Yep. The lower corner. Yep.
Yep, that's giving you a more of a kind of a depiction of that and the different components that go on that light pole. And the beauty of this is that what we do is we normally tap into because if you think about a street light and a light pole, it goes off during the daytime and it comes on when it gets dusk and dark, and then it goes off again the next morning. Well, that's done through a photocell adapter that's checking, watching for the lightness and all that stuff. And so what we do is we tap into that, and then we basically make sure that the photocell is continuously working and it turns the light on and off like it's supposed to, but yet you're getting power to the equipment, because you don't want the equipment to be shut off during the day at the same time the light is. So those are things that we do. We go in and we do the installation all at the same time, and is able to, and that's exactly what we did here in South Texas as well.
Great. Okay, that's definitely something that I think we should. That would be more. That would be a lot of help for us to hear more about. Because as I say, one of the recommendations that we're going to include is to build off of that pilot project that the sustainability coordinator's been working on. Because I think that is what we saw as a potentially possible phase one solution, if it were teamed up with a firm that could put that together. That's not skills that are necessarily in-house in city government, so they would have to partner with someone from outside.
Correct, and we're providing ongoing operational management for that network and supporting it. And I mean, we do get some storms and some high winds and rains and all that, and we've had a few poles get taken out inadvertently. Yep. And we've had to go back in and help replace the equipment on that. So those are things that we have as part of our ongoing management.
I think that's great. Martin, I think that's something that again would feed into what you and your team will be working on, which is the cost of working with a management firm.
Yeah, that was one of the areas that we did look at, because basically the city probably might not have the skill sets immediately available to handle the regular maintenance and stuff. So it may be, prudent to, contract or partner with a firm that has those skills that, they can bring to the table.
Okay, I think, yeah, so Sean and Michael, any information that you could provide related to the cost of those kind of service or the cost of those type of services would be a real help to us too. Again, we are not the people who will be doing the RFQ or the RFP. That'll be the city itself. That's entirely up to them. We can recommend that they do so, and I think we're pretty much on board with that approach, given what we know of the internal skill set of the city at this point in time, which is almost non-existent with this type of thing. So that would be something they would have to cost out and make sure that the money is available for. Diana, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I know that yours is the model team.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I had to adjust
Yep.
my headset.
That's okay.
With the microwave point to point, is there about like an average spectrum?
It depends on the distance. It depends on what you're facing. Obviously, the higher the spectrum that you're going to go, if you're going like into the 60 gigahertz range,
Mm-hmm.
you can get higher throughput, but your distances are going to be shorter.
Right.
And your line of sight's going to be needing to be greater. When you get down into the 5 gigahertz or 11, those are some of the things that says, okay, let's go back and how we do that. We basically understand where's the point A and where's point B, and then we go back and do basically a design and a link budget to see what is that going to take, and what are the constraints that we have within that design that we need to account for.
Thank you. And also to one more question, on one of your slides with the vertical infrastructure you were showing, was the range about like at least 50 feet, or was it greater than that? I'm thinking.
The range for
coverage. Yeah.
Coverage for the actual mesh network.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, depending on the radios you have, obviously it's going to be somewhat dependent on some other factors, but what you're looking at is like each radio is going to be about a 200 feet coverage. And then when you do the mesh, you kind of place those kind of throughout the area. And that gives you where there's really a seamless tie between each of the radios, and your device will transition, and the network will help transition your device as you walk through, drive through, whatever, to keep you connected until you go outside of that area.
Gotcha.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Sean and Mike?
I have one more question about the microwave network. So is that like when it was used in South Texas, was that viewed as like a long-term solution for providing coverage, or kind of like a short term until something else is developed?
So it was not intended to be I'm going to give you broadband to your home. It was not going back and saying it is intended as a public service, that it's a best effort. It's not going to be saying I'm going to guarantee you a certain bandwidth that you're going to get, and that you're guaranteed that every single minute of the day. And when we have if a storm comes through, there's an outage of some sort, we go out and repair that, but it's not going to be instantaneous. It says, hey, I'm out of service, I need to get you out here right away. So that was the intention, because it was really about trying to get, the areas that we went into, they didn't have service. They didn't have any service. And so, there was satellite services, but a lot of these folks could not afford what that was. And even that was, pretty slow in a sense and difficult to keep good connections. So again, the whole purpose of that network is it's kind of a public service, not a service provided, delivered or paid for service offering.
Right. So more of a free service rather than a paid service.
Correct.
Okay. So at a minimum, this could serve as a suitable bridge until a paid service could be established that might be more affordable. Let's say down the line.
That's true.
All right. So as I say, if we take that as a phase one approach, with the understanding that phase one could last a while,
Right.
that may allow better coordination of funds, technology, and time to construct a more permanent mesh network that does provide the kind of
a mesh net. So there's multiple types of mesh networks that you could look at doing, and I mean, if you're looking at more of a permanent one, there is one that can do kind of a gigabit connectivity, and you can actually provide kind of a fixed wireless to the home that gives you very high capacity. Again, this is a higher spectrum, and it's a self-healing, which is nice about mesh networks.
Right.
But at the same time, you can then actually connect up just your wireless mesh radios and still provide public access, and you can limit the bandwidth and all that stuff out in a open area, open space, like in a downtown community, shopping areas or things like that, that allow you to provide that to visitors, guests or residents or whatever. But at the same time, you're not necessarily trying to go and solve to the home. But if you're looking at trying to do both, there are other ways of doing that as well, and making it to where there's a cohabitated solution that's going to help benefit everybody.
I think that might be intriguing to hear more and more about, because what we're looking ideally is something that would lend itself to a transition to a more permanent solution, as permanent as any technology is,
right,
at the pace at which change occurs now. The other thing which we look at is something that might potentially have tiers that are better suited for commercial use versus private use.
Yes.
That could be done more affordably than commercial clients might be paying right now with a private firm. The same competitive speeds, slightly, hopefully more than slightly more affordable within the area covered by this network, the cost of which could help offset the costs to the private home clients, bringing that cost down. So we're looking at, is there a way to create a system that sort of feeds itself, if that makes sense to you?
Correct.
So that would be intriguing. I really appreciate, you've definitely given us some excellent things to look at. And I definitely would like to hear more. I think the rest of the group feels pretty much the same on this one. The question now is next steps. As I say, we can't say, oh, this is the firm that we want to go with. That's not really within our legal purview. We can say, here are people that really helped out, and we would suggest that they have the skills and the services that, for example, you want to partner with, and they've done work before with clients in this area that the city partners with on an ongoing basis, which they do with the county. I think that makes sense. Sean, did you have anything that you wanted to add just as a wrapping up for this portion of the presentation?
No, nothing on my end. Just if there was anything additional that you needed from us, just please.
We'll definitely reach out.
Yes, please feel free to reach out. You have all my contact information.
Yep, and
anything on the information that we spoke about today, or just any questions, post this conversation.
definitely. And what we'll do is we'll share that contact data with the different team heads, because I think they may have different questions, different questions, different questions, different questions, different questions. So that, but we'll all be CC'd on that follow up, so we're not burying you with emails. But definitely, I think you've definitely given us a great deal to think about. And it really helps inform our process as we move towards the final report. Just so that you both know, our goal is to have a final report submitted to the city council, council and the mayor by the end of June. We'd like to do it sooner than that, but it will probably be the end of June, just the way things work. If we have questions, definitely we'd like to meet with you at some point between now and then, and work that out with you. But to you and Michael both, thank you very much.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Great. All right, guys.
Have a
Thank
good
you
night.
so
Nice
much.
meeting everyone.
Night. See you now. You take care.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Okay. All right. And we're to just us now. Okay. I think that was very useful.
I agree, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the question is what to do with it. We are at April 12th. We are 2.5 months out. So, we sort of need to start writing things down. If you're willing to, let's start to see some sub-team meetings. I'm saying that to myself as well as to Martin, Diana, Jeff, over the next 3-4 weeks, in addition to our normal meetings. Do the best you can. CC me on the invites to those. I will try to attend them all, just to hear what's going on and add anything in that I might be able to help with. But realistically, I think the approach that we've talked about, which is to recommend the creation of a position within the city government to coordinate this kind of thing, makes more and more sense as a first step. We've seen that with the sustainability committee. We've seen that with the new neighborhoods department. I'm interested to hear what you will think about that approach. Are we still on board with that?
Yes, because with this, there's a huge component of this is overhead.
Yeah.
And it will have to be like managed efficiently for it to actually run smooth.
Right. I mean, there's going to be contracts involved if we're not doing
Right.
it, and I don't see how we can do it internally. Just have they suddenly in the last few weeks hired a massive amount of new staff to the IT department?
No, they have not.
Then I think we need to look externally, right? Yeah. That is just gonna, and Martin, that means we're gonna have to sort of get a ballpark sense of what that would cost. And Josh, it's gonna be on you and I and Ed, if we can get him to look at where else is doing that. So we can give Martin some material to work with and Diana some material to work with. Jeff, I know you're sort of betwixt and between a few different things. The partnerships piece, I think we got to look at firms like this that might be able to partner with the city to make this happen, to make this occur. Does that make sense? And just put it up in chat if you're having problems with the technical. All right. Yep. Okay. Good. He said yes, yes, and yes, it does. All right.
And Craig, I'm sorry, I have just one more question.
Sure.
I know earlier in this project, we talked about the possibility of actually seeking public input, but
Yes,
given like the tight deadline that we're under right now,
we're
do you
going to be
think
in
it's real-
June.
Okay, yeah. Do you think it's realistic to actually try to plan something up like
I'm
that?
not sure how. Quite honestly, it's going to depend. It's going to depend on what we can
Yeah.
get done during the month of May. If we have something reasonable that we could do a PowerPoint presentation on to share at a meeting, say, here's where we're at with our final report. I would shoot to do that if we do it at the beginning of June.
Okay.
So that
I can see June.
right.
Right.
Then if we get some feedback, we still have a week or two to sort of tweak things. I definitely would like to see us do some outreach. Technically, these meetings are recorded, they're available, they're shared. We may want to look at coordinating that with the with the library, who's been doing some very and the friends of the library who've been doing some very important work right on the ground to push broadband here in the city. I'm not sure if any of you, I'm going to say beyond myself, that got to attend the forum that they had recently, which was very, very good. There was some excellent feedback that was shared with that, including state level support for local broadband projects. And we may want to reach out to them to have them to see if they have a representative that could come to one of our meetings to share the ways in which they might be able to help us out and help the city out. I can talk to Alex Bagot about that.
I think I went to that presentation too. I think that was what, a couple of last Thursday or something.
Yes, last Thursday or Friday, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I got the idea that like they were willing to like incorporate. They were willing to incorporate like municipalities and providing like state funding to support such an operation. But
Yep.
I think they too were like working on developing their potential guidelines, and I think that'd be ready until like the summer.
Right. I think it's early days for them yet, but it might make sense to build into our report some of what they're working on
Oh, definitely.
and list them as, okay, for instance, from Jeff's point from the point of view of Jeff's case, hey, this is one more group that we can partner with that can provide critical support from state level. And here are some of the private firms that they've been working with that may be willing to partner with us as well, which are based in this area. Certainly, the United Way was very on board with making broadband a reality for local governments in this area. So again, those are some of the people that, from a, let's call it a community accountability board point of view, might be very good to have included. So the city would have its internal coordinator who would work with a CAB, which is what a community accountability board is for those that don't know, to promote this and to find ways to make this work. That would provide a structure which would minimize the cost to the city, minimize the risk to the city, and at the same time leverage the sort of community partnerships that we've been talking about, to get access to the funding and some of the, let's call it the logistical skill to make this occur. If that may make sense to you, Martin.
No, that definitely does.
Okay. Yeah, let's see what we can put together with that. Trying to think of anything else off the top of my head. That's mostly what I had for right now. If the team leads can look to set up team meeting, I mean, the meetings don't have to occur within the next week, but set up the meetings within the next week. That would be great. You know, look for when you can get people together. There's a question about people's calendars. We can talk about that, but we're down to crunch time, really, if we do want to do any outreach at all to the community. All right. Hopefully Brian will be able to join us from here on out. As I say, I know he had a specific reason that he couldn't attend today. So my hope is that he will be available on different days. Diana, I know that he'd be very valuable with your team, as we've talked about.
And I'll try to reach out to him again.
Great. As I say, he's pretty good. As I say, it sounds like he's got some stuff going on, but let's see what we can do. And of course, I put out the call again for us to get some additional people, but I have a feeling that's whistling in the wind at this point, to be honest.
Yes, I think so too.
I think it's the crew that we have, and we'll get the job done. You know, I have faith in you. And we'll see what we can do. All right. Any follow-up questions at any point that anyone wants to bring up? No. Okay. Hearing that, Jeff, yes, we'll definitely connect across the next week or so, as you're able to. Trying to think of anything. That's all I've got. So if you're willing to wrap this up, as I said, we can't take a vote or a motion given the new rules, but if everyone's good, just wave. Those that we can see. And we'll see you next time. All right. Thank you.